Oh, yes.
Whoa! Was that a nod hill? Did it spray you everywhere?
No, I've got another Murphy's.
Oh.
I haven't been to the store.
Oh my goodness. Well, I get it. It's winter. Who wants to go to the store? We're all still concerned, about staying safe, etc.
Yeah, that's part of it. I just haven't been anywhere.
You haven't been anywhere,
Permit.
Chris?
What's
We
that?
we need to organize our FUMFA Live social brewery meetup for February. We're already through the first week of February. I need to get on this, Chris. If anybody has a suggestion for which Saturday to do, maybe 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, that President's Day weekend, that might be a good one. That
I
might
don't
be a
even
good
know
one.
how this happened. I don't know how we're. I mean, and February is a short month anyway. We're just like we're already a quarter of the way
We're
through.
already here. We were at February's doorstep, and we didn't even know how we got there. And now it's February 6th. How did it happen? We just
Crazy. Anyway,
absolutely crazy.
Here we are.
Indeed. Chris, guess what? So I was doing a little work this afternoon, and I was realizing that I only had like a little strawberries and cream Baileys, which is delicious, but that's not exactly a fabulous drink for a reading. I want something I can sip on as I'm listening,
Yeah.
that's gonna like last me a while. And so when I was finished working, I ran over to Space Cat, and I wanted to get some cans of Sunsweat Blonde. Even though I'm trying to avoid beer right now, I just couldn't. I had to get myself some beer for FUMFA Live. And they didn't have the cans, so this is the first time ever that I got a crowler. It's as big as my head.
Oh.
Woo! We like to do beer advertisements on here. It's a 32. It's 32. That's a lot of ounces. So yeah, but I had to go for it. I needed that Sunsweat Blonde. I love that from Space Cat. It's so tasty.
That's a tall boy there.
It's a big one. I prefer the smaller cans, but we're going for it tonight.
Things
Susan
could
M.
get a
Davis.
little crazy tonight, people. Could get a little crazy tonight.
Yeah, then we'll know why. Doesn't that look cool? In that little jar, that stout, right? You got a stout, Chris?
Look at
That looks so cool. That looks so extra yummy in that little jar. I love it.
So Susan M. Davis is here from California. She's rubbing our noses in it again. She's wearing shorts.
Terrible. Susan, you're making us jealous.
It's been very cold here. And
yeah.
So
we're just in the thick of it here. And I do get excited when March rolls around. March is a long month and it's still pretty cold, but since spring is, the first day of spring is going to happen within March, I really get excited as if I'm about to start wearing dresses and sandals again. And it's good. It's good. It's good that that's around the corner. I need that.
Well, we'll see. There's mom and dad are here.
Mom and dad.
Moving.
What's that?
Susan says they're moving.
Where are you moving, Susan? We gotta know. To the northeast. In Albuquerque. Come on, Susan. Well, at least it's closer. It's closer. Closer to us, I guess. Sort of. At least we have that. At least. I hope everyone was staying safe in the snow and ice up here while Susan is, at the beach in her shorts.
Albuquerque, I don't know. I mean, she's still not gonna be dealing with, ice and slush.
No, she's not shoveling, cleaning off your car in the morning.
No.
Before you go anywhere, getting slush in your boot. Ugh.
I'm not gonna cry.
I'm not gonna cry.
I'm crying for Susan.
Well, Chris, it is 7:00, and we need to give you an official welcome to FUMFA 82, which is crazy. We are creeping closer and closer to 100 shows, and our 2-year anniversary, which is so exciting. But anyways, we have two amazing writers with us tonight. We have Monica Ong and Patricia Dunn, and we cannot wait to get into their readings. And I think it might be a first for us tonight, or we had maybe a few people on open mics who did this, but we're going to have a feature who is doing a visual poetry with us, Monica Ong, and we're especially pumped to share that with you, and very excited to hear, of course, from Patricia Dunn. And Chris, what else do we have coming up soon?
Well, next week, of course, is our competition, the Super Bowl. Super Bowl's got nothing on this.
No, absolutely not.
Romance night.
Wow!
Valentine's Day, so that's on the 13th. So it's Valentine's Day Eve, and we've got Terry Rose Jurtson, Meredith Kaiser, Susan M. Davis.
Woo!
Midnight, we hope. And who else? Ron Mark Thompson, right? Ron Mark Thompson.
Yes, that's right.
I can't read my writing. And perhaps special guest Katie Schneider. But
oh yes. Unless we have so many. Was that, Chris?
Just saying that people are going to be reading some romantic poems, stories, perhaps some risque.
Woo!
Kind of material in there, so maybe we can at home. But yeah, it could get red hot here, and then we've got the following week we've got Elizabeth Strauss and Blake Z. Wrong. After that, we've got a whole bunch of people: Chris Terracchio, Christine Califas, Ken Cormier, a bunch of people from Connecticut Anthology, including Monica tonight, and the Connecticut Literary Anthology, which is an amazing book. And then just down the line, we got tons and tons and tons of
so much good stuff. And we have our open mic night coming up soon. We have our International Writers Night coming up soon. Please reach out to us. We will be posting more about this, but if any of those things excite you, and if you want to jump on to reading on romance night, you have until 6 p.m. tomorrow to let me know. We would love to have you. And if you're brave enough, you can go into a spice off with Susan M. Davis. Susan M. Davis and Midnight have had just about the spiciest readings.
Terry's going to be reading from her I don't know if she is, but I think she might be reading from her collection of erotica. So I don't know. It could be like I'm gonna have to bring like
that sounds naughty.
Bring like one of those towels that the tennis players use to just like wipe off the sweat off my forehead.
We're gonna have fun. It's gonna be great. So we got great stuff coming up, and we would love for you to participate. We've also been reaching out and connecting with some really incredible authors. We're hoping to have some more pub nights, literary journal nights, and authors from specific presses as well. So it's going to be very cool, and make sure you're following us on everything: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all of them.
We are so hip.
We're super hip. We need to get the word out, and even as
are we on MySpace?
What? MySpace? MySpace? No.
I'm dating myself.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. MySpace. Oh no. Anyways, Chris,
yes.
It is a really wonderful weekend. It's been a lovely weekend, very sunny after all that ice.
Today, beautiful.
Yeah, very, very nice. So we're excited too about my earrings for tonight.
Are we?
They're like blue. They're like glowing.
Oh, they're blue. I can't tell on this.
Oh, you see, it's like very.
Oh, now I can tell. Yes.
They're very thin. They're harder to see. But
purple.
Oh well, they do sort of look purple in my purple light situation here.
There you go.
Chris, where are your beard accessories?
My beard, they're in there.
They're there.
I know they're there. That's the important thing.
That is the important thing. That is the important thing.
That's what
Anyhow.
my wallet is in there, and my phone. So
So that's why everyone should grow a beard, Chris. I mean, you don't even need pockets anymore. Anyhow, it is time for us to welcome our first guest, Monica Ong. Welcome, Monica.
Hiya.
Hello.
Oh, we are so excited to have you. How are you doing this evening before we share your
Doing great. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Fabulous. Chris, I'm going to go ahead and read Monica's bio for everyone. Monica Ong is a visual poet and the author of Silent Anatomies, selected by Joy Harjo as winner of the Core Press First Book Award in Poetry. A Kundiman Poetry Fellow and graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design, Ong innovates on text and image to surface hidden narratives of women and diaspora, blurring the boundaries of art and literature. Planetaria, her current exhibition of astronomy-inspired visual poetry, debuted this summer at the Institute Library of New Haven and will travel to the Poetry Foundation in Chicago for their spring 2022 exhibition. So awesome. Congratulations, Monica. In 2021, she founded Proxima Vera, a micropress specializing in fine press visual poetry editions and literary art objects, many of which have been acquired by institutional collections and museums nationwide. Based in Connecticut, she serves as the user experience designer at the Yale Digital Humanities Laboratory. Awesome. Monica, take it away.
Wow. Thank you for such a warm welcome. Thank you, Chris, Katie. And I'm really thrilled to be in the company of Patricia Dunn tonight. And of course, I'm so grateful to all of you welcoming me into this beautiful space. I'm really excited to do a little bit of stargazing with you this evening and for us to kind of wander into the poems that we find in the night sky together. And as mentioned, Planetaria is a series of astronomy-inspired visual poems. And while I'm not by any means a scientist with all the answers, I definitely come to this process as a poet who's just asking questions about the stories that we enshrine in the night sky and how we might imagine new cosmologies where everyone belongs. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here so that we can, you can see these poems here. So, all right, great. So I'd like to begin with one of my insomnia poems in which I meditate on the things keeping me up at night and which act as an entry point into the vast evening. I produced these insomnia poems in the style of sleep tapes so that you may close your eyes and exhale as we play the audio.
Lavender Insomnia by Monica Ong. Lavender insomnia is my damp hair crying on the pillow. Dirty silverware in the graveyard kitchen buried beneath a long gloom. The crater's quality of silence after collapse that echoes Aunt Juanita's sadness, her moon memory a whispered veil hanging from the window over the stairs. Jealous of winter vetiver and basil's rise in spring, lavender insomnia conspires with the body to step back off the edge of a cliff. Its purpled hands submerge the breath beneath an overturned boat, grinds teeth like a dull blade biding its time. The tall numbers of every hour and every minute burn into the blackened doors shut tight in my eyes that long for a glimpse of the dreaming meadow. Violet and vine, she slips her lady fingers into the mind behind the blue firs, stirs a hive of bees. The 100 eyes of my ancestors, still waiting for justice, gaze back at me.
Oh, Monica, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. So this next piece is a constellation poem that is mapped onto lesser-known asterisms in the northern celestial pole. While the stars on the traditional Chinese constellation map are very much a terrestrial reflection of the society and hierarchies of the time, as well as the military walls that enclose the great emperor of heaven, I wondered what it would be like to reimagine these stars from a female perspective, rewriting the walls as a woman's womb, shifting the symbolism of male conquest to open the door for female power. While designing this as a letterpress broadside, I had the names of the asterisms printed in silver foil, while the lyrical lines were printed in gold foil, both plates laid over a letterpress background of the map's full detail in custom ink. I'm grateful to the artisans of Boxcar Press for their production collaboration. This is called The Purple Forbidden Enclosure, and I'm going to begin with the caption for some context. Upper sector of the northern hemisphere, 40 degrees to 90 degrees declination, with selected constellations both inside and outside the walls of the purple forbidden enclosure. Positioned on a celestial north pole, this central court outranks all other courts, its rule of power spread out like a mother's worry from wall to wall, sky to sky. The muscle memory of your eyes averts the strange foliage of her purple forbidden enclosure. Flying serpents circle overhead. An ear's omen rings in the arrival of wayward ships. Canopy view of clouds not yet consent. Left wall of soft labia raised to let no one in. She is the pillar holding up this portal to the earth. Even the great emperor of heaven must be granted passage to touch the shores of this life and the next. Little girl's lost basket of mulberry leaves. Female protocol, look up to her, see the self dissolve like dust into mouth open sky. Right wall bathed in vigil light, cleansing away local dialects of shame. Celestial bed of maidenhair fern, silver lace vines braid and unbraid time with hidden virtue. Loneliness leaves you atop nightfall's inner steps, her fingertip a tiny moon. The 7 excellencies, once sisters, run to preside over a new sky. No judge of nobility, no more temples of apology. No, so singular and clean. How does one carry the voice like a timely spear, love one you hope to never use? This is an interactive poem that takes the form of a Viewmaster reel, as I wanted the reader to inhabit the stance of stargazing, which the astronomer Caroline Herschel dedicated most of her life to. Born in 1750 as the younger sister of astronomer William Herschel, she was the first woman to receive a salary as a scientist and the first woman awarded the gold medal of the Royal Astronomical Society. William Herschel's discoveries would never have happened without Caroline's labor, whether it was watching the sky for new phenomena, feeding her brother while he worked, or carefully transcribing scientific data. She discovered 8 comets of her own and also developed a new catalog of nebula and stars, which was published under her brother's name. As a visual poem, the text is framed by Herschel's sketches of comet C1786P1, which she observed on August 1st in 1786 between the constellations Ursa Major and the Coma Berenices. So this is called Her Gaze. The eyes of her who is glorified were here below, turned to the starry heavens. Caroline Herschel. A mother's maid blunted, stunted by typhus. Caroline, I watch you sleep by the cinders. Dreams dim in the clouds that thicken in the glass of her gaze. Lace ruffs glimmer over brother's mercurial mirror, placing midnight victuals in the mouth's devotion. At the end of a song, hunger. The belly's moth flutters towards an unnameable light. Beyond some gentleman's call falls a bright haze, a tale of dusty ice between predictable orbits that kiss the perihelion fire of an unquiet heart. To notice is to hold the self open, holy as a grail, steady as a brush, in silken sweeps across soft veils of Valerian sky. Sister soprano, comet huntress, your amanuensis attention is paid in streaks of gold. What debts do we owe to squander ours so cheaply? Beneath the jealous moon, we count our losses to squares of light. My child reaches out a finger to touch the wet dew, presses a diamond into the corner of my eye. This piece is based on a map of the Milky Way. And The Waves of Karma is a constellation poem that I made into a light box as well, with botanical elements, as you can see on the right. After reading the histories of the constellations represented on this map, I wanted to experiment more with creating lyrical connections among the stars. So you might recognize Orion here as the hunter, or Canis Major as the image of dogs, for example. However, the red phoenix of the Chinese sky system also appears in position to bring a feminine counterpoint. So first published in Scientific American, this is called The Way of Karma. The Way of Karma. She touches down, a pulse stirs, her daughter at sea, body bright then dim. Waters swell beneath chariot fires. Listen, I'm not here to run from you. Man-made gods stare her down, bad breath dampening the air. Eyes pray nightly from the river. Causality logs each truth on the ledger of her skin. Hunters will one day kneel to the ghosts of their deeds, as rabid dogs bring fever and relentless heat. Her law permeates from cell to liquid sky, fashions us a red phoenix. Ask her. The heart carries this line between the heavens and the latitude of loss, while she stands over the bed, turning the golden earth for a brief history of force, equal and opposite. Us an erratic variable, face to face. Petal soft and bloom, she hands you a bamboo basket. Eyes lock on a single mirror. This is a piece that is a visual poem that I composed in a bout of insomnia after the shootings in Atlanta of 6 Asian women who worked in the spa industry. And these incidents were very difficult to carry because they haunt so persistently. And actually remembered, my sister even called me and reminded me of when our neighbor showed her the bullet holes in their car after a gunman went on a similar hate crime spree in 1999 that targeted multiple ethnic communities north of Chicago and then cut through our suburb in Northbrook, Illinois. The attack barely missing our neighbors, who are very lucky to be alive today. And so this is a piece called The Daughter's Almanac. The Daughter's Almanac. On this day lies a history that was never written for me. When will we no longer need to look back, not have to don the garments of ghost and grave, nor the old wounds that wear us down in calendar fictions, our lives ticking away on another man's watch? On this day, I choose instead to pencil in the marvels I'm here to set in motion, with each flutter of my finger, the trajectory of our shared arc, and the blade of my gaze, my gaze. Perhaps today these hands will tend the root of a tree emerging in my granddaughter's mind as she searches for me by the river of a new earth. I'll pass along my sun-kissed fruit and the nectar of rubble-born blooms. Tell her, it is your tide that calls the moon. Perhaps today will be the birthday of someone new, someone who will not wait but dares to decide with the heft of both lung and leg, someone who realizes that the scarecrow is just deadwood and hay, that we don't have to be corn or crow, but a story that can move out of strata, across suns, flicking its tail to tip the sky. On this day, I predict that everything is going to change. I'm making invitations for the homecoming we never had, foiled with stardust, each letter of your name spelled correctly and hand-pressed into velvety kiss-cut paper, as though today were a holy day, curling its lips beneath your fingers. So I'm very excited to share with you a reading of this really special piece. It's called The Stargazer, and it's actually a Planosphere poem that I designed after the Sucha astronomical chart of, I think, 1193 in Imperial China. So based on the date and its alignment to the hour, you will get a unique poem each time you read it. And while the maps of the heavens often create landscapes that center powerful men, like whether they're gods or emperors, my interpretation seeks to center the reader. And to me, reading this as a star map is like stargazing, where you're invited to let the eyes wander and make connections that feel natural. So the way I see the sky tonight reflects the poem that came to me, but it might be different for you. So tonight's reading of the Planosphere is going to be reflecting the night sky that appears on February 6th. And I took a few shots of this with my cell phone a little bit, so you can kind of look along if you like. Okay, the Stargazer on February 6th. You are here to enter the palace of your life, to meet yourself on the side of the road beneath a tender sky. Slow the car to a purr, who carries you, a beacon of ghostkin. Step off Moonstone the way Chang'e floats over swelling waters. Your solitude, a deeper well, where rivulets flow from the terrace, willows, time's curtain, tap the kitchen window. Stars send arrows to the land of God and soil. Women warriors gather, take comfort, lifting voices over the vast silence. Bury this whip-wet heap of corpses, a pond of glass, self-slander's blood moon mansion of darkness, eavesdrops wound and whisper in the ear. A prayer in 9 doors still holds the unseen promise of a meadow, your orchard of handheld poems. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm like just still turning it for a second here. Oh boy. Let's see. Okay. In dream revision, home is woven from sky, not skin, a bridge in starlight and star flight. My fingers rub the coins back to find your space. Whatever it is you withhold from yourself, give it generously. Cool. There's just a few more views of this. Okay. All right. I think I'm just going to end on this poem. This piece is called The Dark Side of the Moon. Sorry about that. And, I think one of the things I enjoyed immensely about doing this series is learning about all the hidden histories of women scientists that I wish I'd known about when I was a girl. I think science used to kind of intimidate me, partly because, it just didn't feel really approachable or welcoming to young girls at the time. And I know that there are a lot of people working to change that. In this piece, I was originally set on writing about women's labor as a map of the dark side of the moon, the side that we don't see from Earth. For this, the story of the experimental physicist Chen Chung Wu was my muse. So I will begin with the biographical caption. I know this image looks a little small on the screen, but it's the piece is going to be a much larger broadside that will be like 16 by 22 that will have an embossed map of the moon on which the text will lay. Okay. So Dr. Chen Chung Wu was a Chinese-American experimental physicist. In 1956, she was approached by colleagues Ceng Dao Li and Chen Ning Yang to devise experiments to disprove the theory of the conservation of parity in radioactive decay. Working in low temperatures, Wu placed cobalt-60 into an electromagnetic field and observed that weak interactions among particles were not always symmetrical in nature, overturning this long-held fundamental law of physics. Thanks to the Wu experiment, Li and Yang were awarded the 1957 Nobel Prize in Physics for their theoretical work on the subject. Wu, however, was not included. Her name, Chen Sheng, translates into English as courageous hero. So this is the dark side of the moon. Our labor rises from this side of the moon. Explosive, precise, prolific, yet glimpsed in libration, not liberation. History's gaze tidally locked on our other half. Across your ridges, mountains of evidence map the fission of your mind and the unmirrored truth of all things. Noble women know how to find each other in the dark, between motes of dust and doubt. Pay no mind to stares that care only to caress the surface. Another word for genius is courageous hero. We did much more than survive. Some of us teach our daughters to hang red lanterns at the ends of their limbs, wonder where they wander in the cold cobalt night. In weak interactions among particles or men, you proved more than anyone how symmetry is violated. In your shadow, my sleep breaks. Fields of glass wing butterflies shatter the myopic sky. Invisible in plain sight, flying straight into this eye. So thank you so much again. And yes, as mentioned before, a lot of these works, if you're traveling later in the year, these works will be at the Poetry Foundation this spring. And again, it's been a blast, and I can't wait to hear from Patricia tonight.
Oh my God, Monica! Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Chris, did that not absolutely blow you away?
That was so cool. That was,
Oh,
my only thing. I wish I had like a big screen, like a
well, you can watch
big.
it later on YouTube,
I
Chris,
know it's like
on your smart
good
TV.
idea.
Yeah.
That was like talking about the Dark Side of the Moon. That was like going to the planetarium for those laser shows. But
Ah,
better with poetry.
woo!
Yeah.
Monica, that was absolutely fantastic. So powerful, so poignant, and just the tone of your voice from that first poem and the incredible, design that you have, these beautiful pieces that you have with it, visual pieces that you have with it. I was in that mode. I was in the planetarium. I felt the darkness around me. I was focused on the poetry. Just absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I can't wait to ask you questions in the
Oh,
Q&A.
sure. Yeah, my pleasure.
Right there, if you have questions, put them in the chat right now before you forget them, because I'm
Yes.
sure that you have some.
Yes. We have so much love coming up for you in the chat right now, Monica. Saying just wow, lots of wow. Just loving that, and so many courageous heroes not recognized by their male coworkers. Thank you so much for that. Anyways, Monica, we can't wait to chat with you again in the Q&A. Thank you again for your incredible work. Woo, Chris. Holy
Great. That was great.
moly. That was absolutely incredible. And a first for us, visual poetry. How awesome.
I know. We got to find some more folks who do that, because it's just so cool.
Yeah, and I'm dying to go to Chicago in June,
I know.
in the late spring and catch Monica's show. I can only imagine how incredible that's going to be. And we have another incredible writer to welcome this evening before our Q&A time. And we have to welcome Patricia Dunn. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to thank both of you, Katie and Chris, so much for having me. And Monica, well, I'm a huge fan anyway, and that was incredible. So and I want to get to Chicago too to see that, but that was incredidy. I mean, she already had me as a fan, but now it's like, wow. So of course, when I heard Dark Side of the Moon, of course, my head goes to like my favorite album when I was like 13. But yes, but still, it was incredible. Thank you, Monica. It was beautiful. Hard act to follow, but amazing. Yes.
Well, Patricia, we are equally excited to hear from you tonight. Chris, will you do the honors of sharing Patricia's bio?
Patricia Dunn is an Italian-American raised in the Bronx. She is the author of the highly acclaimed young adult novel, Rebels by Accident, and her debut adult novel called Last Stop on the Six was called by Publishers Weekly an enjoyable story of a woman's return to her riotous Italian-American family in the Bronx on the eve of the Persian Gulf War. Her writing has appeared in Salon, The Village Voice, The Nation, LA Weekly, Christian Science Monitor, also in the New York Times bestselling anthology, Love Inshallah, The Secret Love Lives of American Muslim Women from Soft Skull Press, and elsewhere. Patricia Dunn has served as the senior director of the Writing Institute at Sarah Lawrence College, holds an MFA in creative writing. She is an instructor with our friends at the Westport Writers Workshop as a private writing coach. She is co-founder of the Joe Papaleo Writers Workshop in, I'm not going to say this properly, Cetera, Italy.
You said very well. Better than I usually say it.
And these days she can be found in Stamford, Connecticut.
Woo!
She's, we're happy to say, working on her next book.
Awesome.
Take it away, Patricia. Have fun.
Thank you. Again, it's such an honor to be here. And Monica, I'm a huge fan, and that was wonderful. And Katie, I meant to mention, I love those earrings. Very illuminating. So my current book, just to show you the cover, everybody, Last Stop on the Six. I like to show the cover because was so blessed by the person who did the art. William Papaleo is an incredible artist. And then my wonderful stepson, Mike Tepper, who's a wonderful musician, but also does great layout with covers. So thank you. And I got to thank Boroderiga Press for putting the, people are laughing at me because I'm like a little nervous, so not pronouncing my words very carefully, but Boroderiga Press is like been amazing to all of us writers, putting out works, I guess, by Italian American writers about the Italian American world. Although when I wrote this, I wasn't necessarily thinking that it was an Italian American story, but as you may hear, it is. So I am going to start by reading. I've done a lot of reading since the book came out in November, but I don't think I've ever read the first chapter. So I will start by that. They're so gracious here to give us extra time. Usually you got 5 minutes and you're out. So I'm going to be able to read the first chapter and then a little bit of the crazy, wacky family that people constantly talk about when they hear about this book. Just to set up the book a little bit, it's really the story of a, people like to use the word prodigal daughter returning home. Basically, the main character, Angela, leaves home 10 years prior to the beginning of the story because of an accident that is caused, and she thinks she caused it, and causes her brother to be paralyzed. And so she kind of runs away, not being able to face what she feels she was responsible for. And now she will be called back home. So let me stop the preambling and start the reading. And this is where you can all grab your drinks or whatever and lay back. But you don't want to miss a word. Chapter 1. It was the night of January 12th, 1991, after the largest protest in Los Angeles since Vietnam. We had 3 days left to stop a war. I'd been center stage and shouted until my face flamed, until thousands chanted, "No blood for oil, no blood for oil." Now I found myself in a holding cell, sharing a cold concrete bench with another woman who hadn't meant to stab her pimp in the neck. She'd been aiming for his eyeball. The guard called my name and unlocked the cage. But instead of walking me in the direction of the processing desk, where in the past I had been given my release papers, along with my confiscated belongings, a wallet with $5, a week from expired driver's license, a business card for a National Lawyers Guild attorney, and my worn Birkenstocks, I was taken to the showers. This was the first time I was hosed down, naked, checked for lice, and had to endure a cavity search. When the guard handed me a gray jumpsuit, I kept calm and demanded to see my attorney, to which I was told, "Keep your mouth shut or you can visit the nurse." I was about to have my first prison sleepover. In the line to the dormitories, I recalled what my recent benchmate with the bad aim had warned me. Sleep with your eyes open. They'll stab you for kicks. But I wasn't worried. I was the Bronx girl, the cliche, stubborn, loud, and tough. I could stand up to a wall of LAPD in riot gear without blinking an eye. Not much unnerved me. The guard called out, "Teresa Angela Camponsoni," my legal name. Everyone called me Angela. Teresa was a name my mother hated, but was guilted into by her mother-in-law, who'd lost baby Teresa to sudden infant death syndrome. Here, I raised my face to my perilous fate. "Your release papers came through," the guard said. An hour after my release, I returned to my studio apartment in Venice Beach, California, a community known more for its bodybuilders, artists, and punks than its canals. But on the ground in front of my door was a cardboard FedEx envelope. I picked it up, written in Mommy's perfect Catholic schoolgirl script, my middle name, Angela, last name, Campanosi, address, 25 Park Avenue, Venice Beach, California, with smiley faces in place of the A's in Park and the E's in Avenue. The smog index, Mommy always said, was the reason she would never visit. So I let her imagine some upscale equivalent of New York City's Park Avenue, instead of the sketchy Lower East Side doppelganger that was my neighborhood. If Hollywood Hills was where working actors moved to on their ascent to stardom, I lived where falling stars landed after they extinguished. The threat of a stranger stabbing me for kicks didn't make me sweat. And yet it took 3 shots of tequila at the corner bar to master the courage to tear the perforated edge of that FedEx envelope. Good things come in small packages, but my gut knew that only trouble could come by express mail from my mother. The envelope was now open, but I still couldn't bring myself to look inside. Another shot. I shoved the envelope at the bartender with the surface tan. What's inside? He reached in and pulled out a plane ticket to New York. I grabbed the ticket out of his hand. Tomorrow? One way? I shoved it back into the envelope and mumbled, "Is she crazy?" "Hey, that's you," yelled the man sitting on the stool to my right. On a 19-inch distorted color television screen was the woman with the fashion model features. 5'8", 119 pounds, high cheekbones, and a nose so perfect that strangers stopped her on the street because they had to get the name of her guy. And they never believed there was no guy. And her nose was the nose she was born into. Though it was her eyes, the color of dark chocolate, semi-sweet, that Hollywood agents and talent scouts called her best feature. With eyes round and wide, a lovesick cartoon character, or a can't find my mom in the supermarket 5-year-old, she exuded a vulnerability that could sell anything. I was that girl, but I didn't feel pretty or vulnerable. And on that small, blurry screen with both fists raised to the sky, I wasn't selling lingerie or perfume or lipstick that promised sex, love, and a Malibu beach house. I was selling justice. That's so I thought. The bartender raised the volume, but before the words, "No blood for oil," or "We don't want your fucking war," or "President Bush, shame on you," were chanted, the image on the screen shifted to the 5 warmongers standing across the street from the anti-war rally. Today, as Congress voted to support Bush, should he declare war on Iraq, the public also showed their support of their president. Lies! There were thousands of us, thousands. I slammed my fist down hard, spilling every drink on the bar. Following my rant about lies and the press and the deep pockets of corporations that the corporations that owned them, and how cheap oil was good for business and war made money, and if Bush wanted public opinion to support bombing Iraq, well, that's the story the media was going to spin. The bartender escorted me out of the bar. Pretty girls like you are good for business when they keep their trap shut. I glanced down at my "No Blood for Oil" t-shirt, worn and washed so often over the past 6 months that the blood red had faded to cotton candy pink, and said, "Who you calling pretty?" He slipped the envelope under my arm. "Go to New York, you need a vacation." I staggered over to the sand next to the sign about the toxic water and swimming at your own risk, and plopped down. A vacation. Prison would be more of a vacation than going to the neighborhood I hadn't seen in 10 years. Go back tomorrow? Why, after 10 years, would I? I reached into the envelope, and sure enough, on my mother's real estate company stationery, under the logo 2 Loopies L's for Lane and Lane, in Mommy's perfect script, was my answer: "Your brother's getting married." His wedding would be on Wednesday, January 16th, the day after the deadline the UN Security Council, with Bush leading the charge, gave to Saddam Hussein to pull out of Kuwait, or else. I couldn't understand how my brother planned to get married on the day after we might go to war. Then again, Jimmy and my relationship with him stopped making sense a long time ago. The only other thing my mother wrote was, "Get on the plane, you owe him." I did owe him. Jimmy would never walk again because of me. There are some debts that can never be repaid, though. In LA, I was the Bronx girl, stubborn and tough, an activist with only 3 days to stop a war from happening. And in the Bronx, in Pelham Bay, I was the sister who ruined her brother's life. The idea of returning home made me wish I were still in prison. No blood for oil, I said under my breath. Okay, and now I'm going to just move ahead a little bit to chapter 6. For those of you who may have read the book, won't matter anyway, to just give you a little sense of the family she returns home to. Okay, so she returns home and she's yet to see her brother. And I used to laugh or kind of make fun of younger people when they were reading off their phone. And I realized that now I am finding myself reading off my phone instead of from my book because it's much easier for me to read. Yes, the old eyesight here. Okay, so chapter 6. And hold on a second, I'm actually going to have to read from the book. And after just giving you that whole thing, I'm going to actually go to the book anyway. So hold on a second, and just give me an excuse basically to show you the beautiful cover again. Okay, chapter 6. The dining room was painted red. A color, and before I start this, Mike is the mother's present husband, the stepfather. Dad is the father. And Mike, Dad, and the mother live all under the same roof, which could be strange in some worlds, but, not in their world. The dining room is painted red, a color Mommy insisted represented royalty. And she refused to acknowledge it was also a color popular in restaurants because it dulled the palate so patrons wouldn't taste the imperfections in the food. Both ends of the 6-foot-long glass top dining table bought for Mommy's fantasy dining room, a room 3 times the size of this one, fit flush against the walls, so no one sat at the head. There was also no way for me to walk around the table to get to my seat. I had to crawl under the same way I had when I was 3. But crawling at almost 30 was harder on my knees and my self-esteem. All the usual suspects sat in the same places. Mommy directly across from me, with Dad on her right, and Mike, my stepfather, on her left. The only ones missing were Jimmy and Billy. After that afternoon's kiss with Billy, I was relieved this wasn't most nights, and a part of me was still relieved Jimmy wasn't here either. At the same time, the feeling I had waiting to see Jimmy made me even more anxious than I had been about the looming war. Faceless, voiceless, a creature in the shadows clawing at my soul. I couldn't tell myself what I already knew, with our troops on the Iraqi border and Congress giving Bush the thumbs up, we were already at war. I wouldn't admit what I was sure Jimmy would do when he first saw me. My biggest fear was he would go into his room and lock his door, and I would knock until my knuckles bled, and he still wouldn't let me inside. Your favorites, Mike lifted the plate of antipasto in front of me. Mommy stuck her fork into the sharp provolone and took a bite. You went to Angelo's, she asked. The best, Mike said. His prices are outrageous. Since when, Mike said. Since we have a wedding and other expenses. My mother had never worried about money. Whenever she bought something she clearly couldn't afford, she always said, God gives us what we need. It was the same belief she took to Atlantic City. Sometimes, though, God took a while to pay back the losses. Well, we can't return it, Mommy said. Angela, eat. Before I could explain that I was vegan now and what that meant in the context of Mommy's world, where you ate meat or died, Dad and Mom gave each other the look. They were players in the same spaghetti western. Both reached for their guns, or in this case, the remote. They were players in the same spaghetti western. Both reached for their guns, or in this case, the remote. Mommy, with the fastest reflexes this side of her bedroom, got it. and clicked on the 19-inch color television mounted on the wall at the head of the table. Wheel of Fortune, her second favorite game show, appeared. Dad wasn't staying down, though. He climbed up onto the chair and changed the channel old school. It's the playoffs. It's always something. Mommy clicked back to the wheel. Dad changed the channel back to the team in green on the 4th-yard line. The back and forth went on until Dad lost his balance, and to save himself from falling off the chair, kicked Mike's wine onto the antipasto and splashed marinated mushroom juice onto the front of Mommy's housecoat. That's it, Mike stood. James, get down from that chair and sit. And without having to be asked, Mommy relinquished the remote to Mike. We could watch the news, I said. The news, they said in unison, looking at me and my 3 heads. The news will give you agita before you eat. Mike clicked off the TV. In honor of your homecoming, no television. Dad mumbled something about the game, and Mommy glared at Dad. It was always his fault. Angela, I'm sorry it's ruined, Mike said, picking up the wine-drenched salami, prosciutto, provolone, and mozzarella. The wine gives it flavor, Dad said as he reached for a piece of cheese. Mommy slapped his hand. What are you doing? I was joking. Dad pulled what I thought was a poker chip from his pocket. 3 years sober. So you told me, I said. But the father who gulped, not sipped, the sacramental wine when taking communion, now being a recovering alcoholic, was still surprising to me. You missed a lot living out there in La La Land, Mommy said in her unsubtle accusatory tone. Mike took the plate of antipasto back to the kitchen. So, Dad? Things got a little out of control. You wrapped the van around a telephone pole, Mommy said. It's a miracle you're alive. Another what could you do? My mother had never mentioned in our weekly phone conversations. What matters, Dad said, is one day at a time. I'm okay. Thank God for Billy dragging your ass to a meeting, Mommy said. Did someone say my name? A voice called from the doorway. Billy. I practically squeaked. Mommy glared at me, but whatever comments lingered on the tip of her tongue, she kept to herself. Billy stood inside the front door, wearing the skewed smile that made his face imperfect enough to be sexy and not ugly. The front of his jeans was covered in dried yellow paint, which I found unusual given the fact that he was an exterminator. You're moving in now? You're moving in now? Dad lifted his glass of Coke in Billy's direction, and when I leaned forward, I saw that my backpack and suitcase were at his feet. It's nice seeing you around again, Mommy said. Dad, kid is working hard, Rose. Give him a break, Mike said. Dropping off Angela's stuff she left in the van. Billy glanced over at me. I don't want to interrupt your dinner. Since when? Dad said, smiling. Leave the bags there and come. Sit, eat. Mommy pointed to the empty seat to my right, which was where Billy had sat until the wheelchair. Billy crawled under the table and took the seat. I love the beard. I was flirting with Billy. He looked hotter than he ever had. But Billy was my brother from another mother. Except we had sex once or 5 times. We were experimenting, helping each other prepare for the outside world. I wasn't sure what I was doing now. Don't encourage him. Mommy reached out and tugged on Billy's beard. He needs to shave and stop hiding his handsome face. Don't shave. I gently ran my smooth knuckles, not my fingers, calloused from using a staple gun, to post no war, no more flyers on every swim at your own risk sign along LA County beaches over his beard. Billy pressed his palms together and with restraint, I admired, softly said, why don't we let me worry about my facial grooming? He dropped his hands and reached out to Mike, who was back and balancing a huge family-sized bowl of rigatoni in one hand and a gravy boat in the other. Any luck? Mike handed the pasta to Billy. Now is not the time, Mommy said. Let him speak, Rose. Mike dropped the gravy boat, splashing red onto the gold tablecloth. But Mommy was too focused on Billy to notice. Billy shook his head. You asked the guys at the Mike, enough, time to eat. Mommy ladled pasta from the bowl, still in Billy's hand, onto my plate. What am I missing here? I had to ask. Not your concern, Mommy said, as she now ladled more pasta onto my plate. I extended my hand to stop another scoop from coming my way. If Mommy was force-feeding me, then there was no doubt that I should be concerned. Billy set the bowl with the remaining pasta on the table. Mommy served him 2 scoops and herself 1. Hope it's not overcooked. She bit into a tube, oblivious to the shock that ricocheted around the table from her words. Mike picked up a bowl of remaining pasta, the corners of his mouth lifted straight up as he scooped rigatoni onto Dad's plate. It was clear he was upset. Mike's pasta, always al dente to perfection, was one of the only things Mommy didn't openly doubt and judge. It's fine, she pronounced. I could hear Billy sigh with relief. Now I knew something wasn't wrong, but very wrong. In the house of Marchesi Campanosi Petroli, it was time to talk about the elephant in the wheelchair. Is Jimmy coming home for dinner? I tried to sound as casual as possible. There was a moment of silence, a long moment, maybe the longest silence this family had shared since our parents sat down Jimmy and me and Billy too, to tell us they were getting a divorce. Then Mommy scrunched her face and said, "Eat. You must be starving," Mike poured gravy over the mound of pasta on my plate, and that's when I saw the pieces of shredded flesh. There's meat in this gravy? I bet you went to Angelo's for that too, Mommy said. Perfectly good supermarket right around the corner. The supermarket? Mommy had always said supermarkets were for cleaning products and toilet paper. If it was something you put inside your body, you bought it from a store owner whose home address you knew. What else would there be in a meat gravy? Mike laughed. As Mommy's eyes rose toward me, I said, all great, deciding I would eat around the flesh. I had been vegan for several years, and as much as the thought of eating red meat stabbed directly into my social conscience, I couldn't bring myself to criticize Mike's gravy. I'd save the discussion of evils of meat for later in the meal, after I found out why no one was answering my very simple question. Is someone going to tell me where Jimmy is? More silence, which I should have attributed to their mouths being full which I would have attributed to their mouths being full if Mommy had been eating instead of staring at the television's blank screen. The sense of doom in the air was so persuasive that I swallowed a piece of rigatoni whole, and the tube got stuck in my esophagus. I forced myself to cough, but couldn't get it to come up. Drink this, Billy handed me a glass. I gulped a combination of wine and Coke, sprayed out of my nose, which forced me to cough harder. Do something, Mommy shouted. Hit her in the back, Dad yelled. Stand, Billy ordered. I listened, and he pushed my chair to the side and squeezed behind me. He wrapped his arms around me and with both his fists hit me smack center in the gut. The tube shot out of my mouth and onto Mommy's plate. Dad and Mike both crossed themselves. Thank you. I sat down thinking this wasn't the first time, nor would it be the last Billy had been there for me. Mommy flipped her hair and turned her head so fast in my direction, I expected the gravy to spew from her mouth. Say what you need to say. Dad and Mike sat frozen, the proverbial deer in the headlights. If they don't move, she won't see them. Billy gently put his hand on my thigh, his way of telling me to let it go. But if he remembered anything about me, he knew I couldn't let most things go, and this was no different. Where's the fucking groom? I managed not to keep my voice steady and calm. Watch your mouth. Mommy stabbed her fork into a piece of rigatoni. She said she had to be kidding me. She and everyone in this neighborhood said fuck so often it was used as an adjective, a verb, and a noun. Rose, we have to tell her, Mike said. He's right. Dad reached for more pasta and Mommy slapped his hand. There's nothing to tell, and I don't want to hear another word about it. Okay, Jimmy doesn't want me at the wedding, I said. I get it. It doesn't make any sense. to make things worse and force him and his fiancée to make me a bridesmaid. A bridesmaid? Mommy looked happier than I had ever remembered seeing her. Did Julie call you to ask you? No, Ma. The mauve shoes you gave me an hour ago gave me the hint. Disappointment washed over her face, the shadow of death in the 10 Commandments, Jimmy's second favorite movie. I thought in case you have to stop this, Ma. Stop what? You invite me to this wedding knowing Jimmy doesn't want me here. I know no such thing, her voice cracked. If I didn't know her, I would think she was going to cry. I only got the ticket yesterday. They only got engaged 2 weeks ago. Mommy hit her fist against the table, and Billy reached out and grabbed her plastic cup of Diet Pepsi, saving my pasta for the same ill fate as the antipasto. I put my hand over Billy's and pressed it into my thigh. 2 weeks, Jimmy? Don't you ever give up? Mommy stood. Let it go for Christ's sake. She stalked to her bedroom and closed the door. The lock clicked, and there I was again, an 8-year-old girl at her mother's door begging, let me in, please, Mommy. Say you love me, please. Say you love me. And I think I will stop there. Thank you, everyone.
Woo! Patricia, I love a family dinner table scene. The drama is happening. I need to know what's going to happen next.
Thank you. Yeah, it gets crazier, but yes.
Patricia, my in-laws are Italian. It sounded very familiar in some ways, and I was starting to get. I was getting a little hungry there.
Yeah. No. There's a scene that comes later that is a little bit because the father's an exterminator, and there's with Mike's gravy and something related to exterminating that I'm always surprised that people still are hungry for the gravy after that scene. But everybody always are. Yeah.
Oh dear, that's ominous.
Patricia, that was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Such a great story.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's fun to read.
Absolutely. It was so fun to hear you, and so great to like be in that scene and also in that moment in time too. It's so cool to be in such like a sort of familiar scene, yet back in 1991.
Well, when I started, I started writing this not too far after 1991. So now when I'm told that this is kind of historical fiction, I'm like, wow.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, talk about time passing way too fast. I'm like, okay, I guess, you're a lot older than I thought, but yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is so funny, Patricia. I absolutely love it. And we can purchase this now. This is on the Last Stop on 6.
Yes, Last Stop on 6. You can get it if you go to patriciadunnauthor.com. There's all these ways. I encourage people to support your independent bookstores, and so you can go to Indie Bound. There's also a e-version of the book too, but support your bookstores and get it. It's available now, and as I tell everybody, you do not have to read the book. You just have to buy it.
Well, they do have to read it. I'm going to add that.
Yes. All right. Well, but I'm not making anybody read it. I just want to make you buy it.
They're going to want to read it.
We'll make them read it.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much, Patricia. Let's give a round of applause one more time for Monica Ong and Patricia Dunn. Fabulous.
Brava.
Absolutely awesome. And it's Q&A time, everyone. Get your Q's into the chat, and we will ask. You can ask either one of our writers from tonight, both of them. Please get typing. But as you're doing that, Chris, would you do the honors of asking our incredible authors our famous first question?
Of course. We'll start with Monica.
Sure.
It's a simple question, but that doesn't mean it's easy. How has writing changed your life, Monica?
Oh, that's a great question. Writing has helped me learn to be in community with so many people I think I otherwise would not have been able to meet. And I think that's been like, I mean, for this series, I would kind of reach out to scientists, and there's this ooh ah thing, because when the scientists meet poets, they're like, ooh, and then when I meet a scientist, I'm like, ooh, and we start, because I think there's a mutual admiration, right? Because you kind of admire each other from afar, and you're like, oh, you do such cool things, and they're like, no, you do such cool things, and so when you can kind of geek out about, something like, just like planets, or just, I ask people, like, who are your favorite, women heroes in science? And a lot of scientists were just so generous with it, because honestly, I didn't really know any, going into this. So I think, that's super fun. And I always like doing projects where I go into territory where I'm kind of a newcomer. I don't know much, because that means I get to learn a lot.
I love that, Monica. Absolutely. That is so great.
And yeah, and you went to RISD, right? And so just a little follow-up question: were you a poet? I mean, it's the School of Design, so were you a poet going to RISD to to sort of supplement your poetry, or do something different from poetry, or did you discover poetry after you started designing? How
Did
did
you go
that?
there with the intention to do text and image?
Yeah.
I'm dying to know. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's so funny, because I think I was someone who always was working with both a lot, but my training was mostly in art school. And when I was about to go to grad, I was accepted to both a writing program and art school too. And then because RISD had a digital media program, I figured, well, and this was the early 2000s, so I was like, oh, if I get into computers, I can kind of get them both working together, right? And the thing was that, and again, I think some of it's just serendipity, but my digital media seminar was led by a poet, Wendy Walters, who, and I asked her, I said, I just feel like I don't make work that makes sense to anybody. And she said, no, actually, there's been a long tradition of visual poetics in a lot of places that you just haven't heard of yet, And so she introduced me to Teresa Hakkyang Cha and Claudia Rankin, and she kind of opened my eyes to the fact that people have been innovating for decades, actually. It's just that maybe in the places where I encountered poetry, I didn't necessarily get exposed to that. So in a way, RISD was a fun setting, because I feel like she kind of knew, we were a certain crop of students that were kind of more in this visual side, and so thanks to her, it kind of blossomed from there.
Awesome.
So Patricia, how's writing changed your life?
Well, I used to be a happy person before. I think I was, well, it's kind of a interesting question. So I'm trying to think, let's say, stay positive is what people tell me. I've been teaching writing also for 18 years. So I don't want to discourage my students, but basically I tell them the first day of class, run if you can. But I think I started writing at a very young age, only because this family, which is a little bit based on a family I know, very, very loud. And so nobody listened to you when you spoke, but when you wrote a note and you stuck it under your parents' door, all of a sudden they paid attention. So I think there was something about the power of reading. But then I kept backing off. I did a lot of journalism, but when I got to fiction, it was the same thing. I think I'd say when I found community, which took me a while to figure out what that even meant, then I think things changed. And look, writing is really hard. And Grace Paley was an amazing short story writer. As they say, God rest her soul. I got to see her speak a few times, and she once said that if you don't love it, do something else, because there's a lot of pain and rejection, and there's things that are much better that you'll have more more joyful time doing. And I used to say that at the beginning of every class, we'll give you your money back. Nobody ever took me up on it, thank goodness, because I probably would have gotten trouble from the administration. But one day a student came over to me, and these were old adult students, and she said, I don't always love it, but I have no choice. And that was truer for me. It's like I had no choice. But then I realizing if you have no choice, you don't need to do it alone, and books and stories and art it happens, as we were just hearing, in collaboration, and finding other writers that get you in which I've been lucky enough to find that also support you, not just as a critique group for your work, but as your life. I mean, I've been
Yes.
writing with the same people for 20 years, and the rejections and, family issues and people who, your family. I mean, when all these negative things are happening and you're like, I'm never writing another word, they'll pat you on the back and they'll say, okay, you don't have to write again. And then 2 days later, before COVID, they're pounding on your door. Now they'll call you up on the phone or whatever and tell you, get up, you got to write something.
Yeah.
So it's doing that for each other. So I don't know what my life would be like if I wasn't a writer. I think I'd probably be a lot more lost than I probably am now. Maybe I would talk less. I used to be very shy, and now I'm less shy. I don't know.
Right.
So it's a great question, but it's hard to answer. But I don't think I have any choice. So yeah.
Patricia, I loved all of your answers to that question, and that is so great. And I love that both of you spoke to the power of community that comes through writing. I think that is absolutely awesome. Patricia, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know how people do it without community, because it's just too hard to do alone.
For sure.
Completely agree.
That's how this whole thing got started. Was this reading series was just
that's great.
Let's we're all stuck in our homes. I'm doing this for almost 2 years now, and it's like, how are we going to do this? We got to get together and read.
Yeah. And encourage each other and share with each other and continue to.
And that's the great thing about. Great. I shouldn't say there's any great thing about COVID, but the one thing that COVID has done.
Silver lining.
Yeah, the silver lining is, I remember when I was like, at the time I was still directing the writing program, and we had to put 30 classes online like in a week because of COVID. And a lot of our older students, they didn't even want to turn on a computer.
Yeah.
But when this happened, they went online right away. And we've been reaching people, and your programs have popped up, that you're reaching people like from communities all around the world, the country, that wouldn't have access to readings that you can maybe find in New York. Yeah, and that I found has been really great. I've had a few people contact me from other parts of the country, like in small towns, and they're like, oh, I found you online, or I found this reading online, or this support, this writing group online, and they were basically isolated. So that's been really good for that. So, and thank you for doing these programs, because I know they are not easy to get together, and they look easy because you both are so relaxed and funny. But I know how much work you're putting into it. So thank you. It's a big gift.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Our pleasure.
I think if COVID ended tomorrow, and if it was magically back to normal, like it never happened, there would still be a ton of these online readings now, because people have gotten used to it.
More than accessibility.
We send an email and we get our friend Unmesh from India to read with us, and it's like, well, when is that going to happen?
He wakes up at 5 a.m. tomorrow to be at our readings. It's awesome. It's absolutely incredible.
That's great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat from Melissa Slattery for Monica. She says, is the type for the different pieces handset or done with polymer plates? Do you ever edit on the fly once the printing begins? What a fascinating question.
Yeah, so I actually collaborate with artisans at Boxcar Press, and so we do a lot of back and forth, right? Because in my mind, I'll have imagined and designed them a certain way, and they sometimes will kind of bring me back to reality and say, okay, first of all, you're doing something super complicated, and so there's some simplification, and I think. But to her point, right, like for example, like with something like the Stargazer, where the type size is quite small, I tend to go with sans serif fonts, because serifs are so teeny and they can kind of get like lost, and again, I know like they can do really, really super fine printing, but it's as much as possible you want to try to error proof what you're submitting, and they, and I, again, like I come at it as a designer, and kind of these types of projects where it is very much like a collaborative process, and again, community, as that we had talked about before, these pieces like can't come together without that kind of collaboration. So And yeah, so, but, and it's great. So kudos to Boxcar Press, you know.
That is so awesome.
Do you have the visual in mind as you're writing a poem, or do you write a poem and then come up with it's almost like music and lyrics, you know, it's like
Yes.
which comes first, you know, and then one affects the other once you get going. But
You know, sometimes I will like be observing objects and I'll in my mind I'll say I don't know how, but that's going to be a poem. So sometimes I'll have that moment. So and actually I was looking at planospheres, you know, one day and just thinking of them as like, you know, wouldn't it be so interesting to be able to turn this into a poem and to be able to have a different poem, you know, depending on the day, right? And so you know, I've had that feeling. Like I did in Silent Anatomies, I had a whole series based on medicine bottles. So that was just me looking at vintage apothecary medicine bottles and thinking about the superstitions and like wives' tales my mom used to tell me, you know, because they were superstitious and about the body and spirits and stuff. So, you know, so I'll have that moment where I'll come across something and really want to embody it, because there's something about a poem that's as an embodied object that's kind of interesting and interactive to me. But at this, and at the same time though too, like a lot of there's some pieces you've seen where I'm working with a lot of found public domain material, like old astronomy textbooks. And so like the Daughter's Almanac was using old textbooks and then a lot of my parents' archival photos. And then just kind of writing and then just composing the images as I go. And sometimes when I look at the collage, I kind of, you know, decide a lot of my line breaking is also like me as a graphic designer thinking, you know, this shape actually will work better with this composition, or, you know, and the placement. And so it's a visual rhythm, but there's also a sonic rhythm. So there's a little bit of that layering happening when that happens.
I love that. Oh, that is so cool. That is so awesome. Monica, thank you for sharing that with us. Patricia, I wanted to ask you, you give a warning to your students at the beginning of class, run. And I'm interested, I'm interested for you. Were you always kind of writing and teaching at the same time, or did you kind of start writing and seeking out publishing first before you became a professor? And how did that feel for you with your feelings about being a writer?
I have an MFA, so I'm not a PhD. So that's why we actually say I don't know if you're allowed to call me professor, but people do, so I'll take it. Anyway, Dr. Pat. Okay. I like to say I don't play doctor on TV, and I don't actually you know, have a medical license, but I do love to give medical advice. But anyway, no, I was doing a lot of other things. I was actually myself an activist, went to many colleges, had many jobs. People, you know, I traveled around the world. I was doing a lot of, I thought I wanted to be like a mainstream journalist. And then I won money. This is a whole other story, but I won money on a game show.
Oh my God.
I lived in LA and I couldn't afford to go to Europe because after paying back bills, but I could afford to go to Nicaragua with a friend of mine to help at the time the Sandinistas build homes. And
incredible.
Backed out and I went not knowing what I was getting into. It was my early 20s. And I just observed, you know, I grew up under Nixon, government lies. That was no surprise. But when I saw how the journalism was like being played out, I realized, okay, I can't do it. So I did a lot of like other type of, you know, alternative journalism and, you know, did a lot of other writing, but I think I stopped writing for a couple of years and then took a class with Cindy Berfui, who is an amazing, also a poet and a nonfiction writer. And she got me thinking about writing again when I was working full time and I was finishing my degree. And then without telling anybody, I applied to an MFA program. Even my therapist at the time said, well, what? You did what? Because I guess I was so, you know, I don't belong there. And I wasn't able to call myself a writer, I think, until even after I graduated. But I didn't start teaching until a couple of years. No, I started student teaching while I was in my MFA program and then started really teaching a couple of years after graduation. So before that, I really thought, oh, if I teach, it's going to take away from my writing. Or I was once told from a teacher, those who, that horrible expression that those who do teach,
Oh,
and those who can't teach, or whatever it was. And I just spoke on a panel that was all about like teachers and writers, and it's like those who do actually teach. And I learned more from teaching about my own writing and writing in general, and I love it. And it's done more to inspire me because of that. So I get as much from my students, I think, as they give me. So, and I tell that to everybody, you read books that are in print, and you can learn so much from them. But when you're reading books in progress, other writers, you learn more about your own writing than I think you can ever from a lot of other things. So, and I think we need to, what I think I've been lucky that I've had writers I've been around, and I've also been in classes where our philosophy is you learn as much from what you do well as from like what you don't do so well. And so just having that pointed out to me and being able to do that for others really makes a big difference, because you can build on that. So it's, and we live in a world where it's hard enough for all artists, for writers, it's hard enough for everybody. So when you look to your right and you look to your left, if those people are publishing, that's a good thing. It's not like you want to cut people out. You want to, like, the more there are, the better. It's like, that's kind of, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Patricia, what an amazing journey. So fabulous.
Yes. Usually when I start going into these jobs, I've been an aerobics instructor, a bodybuilder. I mean, the things I go through, people start looking at me like, okay, you're making this up. I'm like, okay, I do make up a lot of things, but the many jobs I've had, that is, yeah. And then they was like, well, then why don't you write a memoir? I'm like, no, I'm not going there. Right. Not right now.
Patricia, was it Wheel of Fortune that you were on?
No, no, I would never have done well on Wheel of Fortune. It was called Headline Chasers. And my partner actually was a writer for The Voice. He was a critic, but he knew everything about history. I mean, he would have been one of those top winners on Jeopardy. And in that time when I lived in LA, you could just see these ads all the time for, Jeopardy and all these places that you could just easily get on. And I'm like, come on, go on Jeopardy. We need the money. And he said, no, I'm not going on a game show, but if you go on, I'll go on with you.
That's incredible.
So Headline Chasers was something you basically had to do things that were in the headlines. And the only reason we got on the show is because he got everything right on the test. I got everything wrong. So that was a balance. And we actually got into an argument. So it was a room of 100 people. We started arguing, and they thought we had personality. But when it was only a one-time thing, but we won $14,000, which was a fortune for us. And then every time the buzzer would go off, I would look to the other couple and then realize, no, it was my partner. So I did answer 2 questions. One I got wrong, one I got right. But we were so broke. The glasses I was wearing were borrowed from my friend and his sister, actually, because I couldn't even see. It was hysterical. So my brother, who's who was a child actor, by the way, in his moment of pride when it was aired on TV, he's watching with all his friends, and they're like, so that's your sister? And he's like, oh, no, that's my brother, my partner. That's just his girlfriend. I was like, come on, because I was so embarrassed. But anyway, it was that the game show, I guess, set me off into a whole other world. So
that's amazing, Patricia.
The memoir.
Yeah, I know, that's the thing. That's not a memoir, and I always respect poets. I bow to poets, because as somebody who's thought, we all think we're poets, and then we graduate to other kind of writing, and it's no, poetry is the hardest thing in the world. And so anyway, so it's the same thing with memoir. You think it's oh, I'll just write about my life, and it's no,
it's not
good. It's a lot of work.
Monica, I'm dying to ask you, before our famous last question, I'm dying to ask you about your press, Proxima Vera, a micro press specializing in fine press visual poetry editions. Tell us more.
Fabulous, by the way.
Yeah, no, I because I would make these things and bring them to shows, and then I realized, people might like them. So I was just why not? So I actually established the press in 2021, and the work is available to both individual collectors as well as institutional collections. And so people can, if they want to look at her gaze with their own viewmasters, or read poems from the night sky, and as well as the broadside, some of the broadsides, they're there, and and available for purchase. So it's proximavera.com. But I've also been working on getting a lot of these works into institutional collections as well. So it also lists universities and museums where you might find the work if you're just looking for work for research as well.
That is so cool. Monica, is this press accepting submissions from visual poets, or not at this time?
Not at this time. I'm still a tiny startup. I'll be like, after dinner, I'll be like putting my son to bed, and I have to go, and then I go downstairs and I'm like, okay, now I got to figure out like all this like shipping stuff. And then there's like bubble wrap all over the floor. My husband's like, what is going on here? And I'm like,
That's
I know, I'm still figuring this out.
Yes, that is so fabulous. Well, people are asking in the chat if they can purchase these pieces, and they can from Proximavera.
Yes, yeah. So they can hop on to proximavera.com, and there's a gallery, and they can browse around, and if they have questions, they can always email me too. So yes, people are welcome.
Fabulous. That is so cool, Monica. Thank you so much. Chris, I think it's time for our famous last double question.
Double question. We'll start with Patricia. So, other than run, a pearl of wisdom for writers looking for advice. And part 2 of this question is a book suggestion. Anything that strikes your fancy lately, or a classic or whatever. So a pearl of wisdom, and then a book suggestion.
Okay, so pearl of wisdom. And I just have so many. No, I think without wanting to sound redundant, I think it's about find yourself a writers community support group.
Yes.
Really, and I'm talking about a group of people, and sometimes it means like if you putting an ad out, I don't know, it used to be Craigslist, but look on Facebook, or go to your the local library, or taking a class, like I said, I teach at Westport Writers. There's so many like online classes, but just find a group of other writers that not only get you, and they don't have to be doing the same kind of writing, but they're going to support you to do the writing that you want to do, right? They're not trying to write your book or try to, write what you're doing, but that they can share you, and then you can just, writers get writers. So I think that's really the important thing, that, your family may be great, and a lot of people will give, but they're not going to understand why you want to give up your birthday. Like, what do you want for your birthday? I just want to be left alone to write. No, but your writing friends, and community will get that. And and also I have a newsletter that's called like How Not to Write. So I give a lot of suggestions on ways that you can avoid writing. And really, the bottom line is the answer to all writers' questions is write. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, just write, and just try to shut that negative head down. And you can't always do that yourself. So that's why you got to get somebody else to sometimes yell at you, or yell at yourself to just say, all right, stop. So that's the advice, I guess. And then there's so many books, but a book that I just reread by an author who I love very much, and used to co-teach with, but I just read her book, and it's fabulous, for the 3rd time. And she has another book coming out in 2023. The author is Jim and Han, and it's called A Small Revolution. And also, takes place around political activism in Korea, and then in the States. But it's very pointing to a lot of stuff that's going on in the world that's happening today. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Patricia.
Thank you. Oh, and definitely Monica's work is fabulous. So
yes.
I want to encourage all of those novelists and nonfiction writers to read poetry, because it can be intimidating, but you will learn so much about language and just words. And how to be just more experimental. Yes. You don't always get from other writing. So anyway.
Totally. Patricia, thank you so much.
Thank you. I love your earrings again, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Patricia. I heard you before. I wrote thank you in the chat as well. Yes, thank you. Monica, your pearl of wisdom and your recommendation.
So let's see. So I always try to, encourage folks who, especially when they are trying to venture into new areas in their work or their writing, is to always, treat what you do as an experiment, in the
Yes.
sense that it's always about experimentation. And I think, and something that I also always have in the back of my mind when I'm trying something new is this idea that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I know that we want to write what we know, but there's also this part of being open to being surprised by your process,
Yes.
being open to the lessons that like failure can teach us. And I think what I learned a lot from design school is that it's really iteration, right? Like, because when you're in design school, right, you like when my husband, when he's an industrial designer, he's like, yeah, the first 20 ideas you're just trying to get out of the way,
Right.
and then the next 10 are like the ones where maybe something interesting starts to surface, and then he's like, and then maybe one will go to market, but but
Yes.
but it allows us to free ourselves from being too precious, or even pressure, like putting too much anxiety and pressure on ourselves, and actually allowing ourselves to actually find pleasure and to me, that's what I like about experimentation as a frame, is that it's about play. It's about
Yes.
having fun. It's about really just trying that thing you've been curious about,
Right.
and being okay with not knowing everything, right? Like, actually, it's kind of like nice to have that kind of like that first day of school feeling where I'm like, oh,
Yes.
I'm just here to learn. I'm just here to like kind of be open, and I think that's what it kind of allows me to kind of venture to new territory.
I love that.
In that. So, and as far as just like books that I've really been excited about, so I'm like I'm like getting chills. I love Krista Franklin. Like, if you guys don't know Krista
Yes.
Franklin, she's this incredible Chicago-based artist and poet. She engages in like Afrofuturism and like pop
Cool.
culture and families. But again, she's that kind of person who makes these beautiful, artist books. But she also has a book with Haymarket Books. It's called Too Much Midnight. That's available like online. And again, that it's just that it feels like so tactile. It jumps off the page.
Yes.
And there's the layers and the histories and
Ooh.
family and her play and language. You hear jazz, you hear all these other
Cool.
vernacular, all these things coming off the page. So I get excited again, because it's like, again, what just the people modeling, just
Yes.
doing things across boundaries. It just makes me feel a little less lonely.
Right.
And just kind of
And
feel like,
encouraged and
this is
inspired.
okay. It's okay to like kind of be meandering, in these different places. And she just kind of, she's so loose. She just plays, and she does it with style and genius, and just this like beautiful savvy, that I enjoy. So
I absolutely love that. That is so cool, Monica. I totally get it. I've been doing a thing between poetry and music, and it's slow going. But I totally get what you mean when you have this crossover and you're playing and you're incorporating these different aspects of design, sound, image, just the concept that you're writing about. And I love also what you said about the kind of freedom to just write and have edits and revisions and just like embrace that process rather than stressing yourself out or pressuring yourself too much. Love it. Thank you so much once again to Monica Ong and Patricia Dunn.
Thank you.
What an absolute pleasure to hear from both of you, to hear from both of your works. Everybody follow them on social media, go and get their books and Monica, your poems. And if you can get out to Chicago and see that show, I want to see it.
Yes.
It's going to be absolutely amazing. And Chris, remind us about next week.
Next week, Romance Night.
Woo!
It's
Valentine's Day Eve.
Yes.
tune in.
Romance
The
again.
hell with the Super Bowl. Who needs the Super Bowl? You can
What's
have
the Super Bowl?
some
I heard the
real romance here. Okay, so you can miss the first half. Who cares? Who cares about that?
Exactly. Thank you so much to our audience. Thank you to our amazing readers, our guests for tonight. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And I hope you all have a great night. We will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Great.
Good night.